of the United States is a coward who is Vladimir Putin's puppet. And the Vice President of the United States is a pogue and a coward who is Donald Trump's puppet. And so what we just witnessed was a meeting in the Oval Office between two cowardly puppets and a hero. And whether you voted for these puppets or not, just as an American, as a fellow American, it's just embarrassing that the only hero in the Oval Office, the only decent human being for that matter, is the Ukrainian. I mean, this administration is going to go down as an embarrassment to American history.
Congressman, I wonder if you think that President Zelensky could have handled it differently, the way that some of his European counterparts and Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer did, and perhaps been more deferential to Trump and Vance.
Deferential to what? Deferential to a president who allowed a deal in his first term to crumble because Putin just violated it? Deferential to a vice president who didn't even bother to visit Ukraine? I hardly know anyone in Congress who has any view on national security who hasn't been to Ukraine during this war. Deferential to a draft dodger who's our commander-in-chief? Zelensky doesn't deserve to be deferential to anyone in that Oval Office. In fact, I kind of wish he'd put them in their place a little bit stronger.
Congressman Don Bacon calling it, quote, a bad day for America's foreign policy. That's a Republican. Joining me now, Illinois Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley. Congressman, do you agree with your Republican counterpart?
Well, you know, I do. This is the Trump-Vance clown show, and it's horrifying. We are fundamentally a different country than what we were just weeks ago, to our friends and foes alike, and we are fundamentally less safe. I have to say, the thing that struck me first and foremost was saying that they were ungrateful. I met with Ukrainian military officials yesterday. I met members of the Rada and their military. I've met President Zelensky 7 times since the war started. Every meeting with them here and in Ukraine began with their extraordinary gratitude of what the United States has done to help. And they continue to do that. And when I compare the president talking about Zelensky not being legitimate, when in his first term, he refused to even question Putin versus our own intel community, to ever say anything but nice things about Putin, a tyrant who kills his own people, who invaded. I stood on the mass grave at Bucha. For him to not question Putin, the man who came from KGB's legitimacy, he's more like Putin. Zelensky, who has gone through great risk for his life, at a time unlike the Blitz, he reminds me of Churchill. So this is embarrassing beyond comprehension. I hope my other Republican colleagues will stand with us to do the right thing.
You are co-chair of the House Ukrainian Caucus. And I wonder what kind of conversations you have now and what this means, you think, for U.S. foreign policy and for our relationship with our allies.
I don't know if we have allies anymore. That would have sounded hyperbolic just a little while ago. We're putting tariffs on our closest, most important trade partners. We're telling NATO that it's on its own. We're telling the country that's involved with the greatest land war since the Second World War that we had been supporting for all the reasons we fought the Second World War, that they're on their own and we're extorting them for the second time in Trump time as president. So that's why I said I think we're less safe. It again goes back to the history. Presidents who have done the right thing since these have become an issue in the last century have all spoken eloquently in the opposite direction. FDR in his last inaugural said, "We have learned that we are dependent on the safety of other countries far away for our own welfare. John F. Kennedy said, we will oppose any foe, and we will do everything we can to help any friend.
So that was then, and now this is today. Carl, what was your read on what you watched on TV for the past 30 minutes?
Well, this is why diplomacy should never be conducted in public. I'm confident, and we now know that, for example, in World War II, there were heated disagreements between Franklin Roosevelt, Joseph Stalin, and Winston Churchill, but we didn't see them broadcast on TV, and what we saw were statements that came out of these big conferences in which the Allies made an effort to move forward together. It is hard to get, it is going to be incredibly hard to walk back from the kind of animosity that we saw in that room today, and to walk back some of those statements. It could have been done if it had not been, if cameras had not been running. But the only winner out of today is Vladimir Putin. This is a mistake to have it broadcast. It was a mistake for Zelensky to get his dander up, and it was a mistake for the president and the vice president to be so public in their comments. This was not the moment that should have been televised. They should have had those conversations out of camera sight, and I'm confident that then they would have been able to find a way to move forward. But it's really hard when you've had the kind of coverage of this moment that we've now had.
Yeah, and we're looking live at the I want to bring in NBC's Yamiche Alcindor covering the White House. Rick Stengel served as Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs under President Obama. He is also an MSNBC political analyst and former U.S. ambassador to Russia. Michael McFaul, I have to start with you, Mr. Ambassador, because I certainly have never seen anything like what we just watched unfold between the President of the United States and the leader of another country. Give me your take on what we've just witnessed.
We're on live TV, so I'm not going to speak in terms that I would speak if we were off the air, but this was horrific. This was a tragedy, and a tragedy for American national security interests. I want to really emphasize that. This does nobody any good. This doesn't make the American people better off tomorrow. The senator, now Vice President Vance, pleading for the leader of a country to pledge his fealty to President Trump and say thank you. I want to remind your viewers, President Zelensky said thank you to the American people 1,000 times. Use ChatGPT, Mr. Vice President, and look for it. And by the way, Senator Vance voted against that aid to Ukraine. So the paradox of that, it just was shocking to me. And they need to sign this deal. This deal was good for the United States, was good for Ukraine. And instead of signing that deal, we were relitigating Biden and Obama. And I just wish the president would put our interests today front and center and stop litigating what happened in 2016 or before, because that is not in America's national interest.
Rick Stengel, not only did he talk about what he thought, what President Trump says is the problems that were caused by both President Obama and President Biden, but somehow Hunter Biden got put in the middle of this. But let me play something that the ambassador just referenced, and that was the clear upset on the part of both Vice President Vance and President Trump that they felt that President Zelensky was not appreciating enough what the United States was offering to do for them or has done for them. Let me play that first piece of sound that came again from the end of what you're looking at right now. And when that happens again in this playback, we'll play it for you full. But let's take a listen.
You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
And you can see the look on President Trump's face. Rick Stengel, let me get your reaction.
He sounded there like one of the head of the five families. I agree with Mike. And one of the things, as the ambassador knows, is that in diplomacy, you prepare and prepare and prepare for meetings so that something like this doesn't happen. Trump treats everything as though it's a television show, and in this case, it's a live television show. He even said at the end, "This is going to make great TV." I think I watched the beginning of it, and Zelensky said thank you a number of times. It is hypocritical for the vice president who voted against aid to Ukraine to ask Mr. Zelensky to thank him for it. It's also so at variance with the last 75 years of American history since the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan was one of the greatest acts of international generosity in world history. And we didn't ask the French or the Germans or the Japanese to say thank you, but they were grateful. And that is part of the reason why